Hello and welcome to the Fierce and Fabulous Duo. I'm Dr. Tony and I'm here with my co-host Sandra Katina. There are lots of people today who are speaking, writing books, and sharing videos. But today we're interviewing someone who has not only done that for more than 20 years with some of the largest companies in the world, he's an award-winning entrepreneur who has been featured in magazines like Entrepreneur, Ad Age, Black Enterprise Magazine, and has been a regular contributor to ABC News. I'm talking about André Taylor, whose current venture is Taylor Insight Worldwide, where he advises premium and luxury brands on business growth. We invited André because we wanted to hear his perspective on opportunity in this market, as well as wanting to hear about his experience with fierce and fabulous women in his life and career. Andre, we're looking forward to interviewing you today as you have such a rich background in helping people obtain their business goals. Welcome to the podcast. So, Andre, tell us what you're up to these days.
I want to start out by congratulating you on this podcast because there's so many people doing podcasts today. And when I heard the name Fierce and Fabulous, I knew I needed to be a part of this. So, congratulations to you. I think this is an idea that is right for the times. And I have been thinking a lot about, and I always do that. This is what I'm always thinking about. What is right for the moment? Because you live long enough, you realize that these moments, as unique as they seem, these we go through patterns and you learn things, you experience things, you engage in life and business and career and family, and you learn how to manage through these moments. So I'm always thinking about what's right for this moment.
Andre, it's just so great to have you on here with us. Thanks for being part of our podcast today. And I've known you for almost 20 years. I met you through Tony Mitchell and Carrie Ruff, and we've been friends ever since.
Mhm.
I've been to your seminars and workshops. I've had the pleasure of attending your events, and you share so much wisdom on career growth, on how to become an entrepreneur, how to constantly better yourself, how to constantly move up in business. And your workshops are just chock full of information. And I also call them mind expanding workshops because there were a couple of times that I went to your workshops where it was like, oh, I can do that.
Hmm.
And when I left, I had a whole new perspective on business. Would you tell me what you have to say to our audience who are interested in being fierce and fabulous during these times now?
Well, I think this is an interesting period because there's a combination of forces. There's this political tension.
Mm.
There's things happening in the financial markets. There's multi-generational workforces. There are companies downsizing. We just came off of a pandemic not that long ago. So you have this convergence of things that can cause everyone to wonder, is the world ending? What's really going on here? But as I said, we are experiencing something that is not new. This has happened before. Maybe not this specifically, but these kinds of things have happened before. So I think that the real key during these moments is to develop a sense of clarity, to be able to turn down the noise in your life and to kind of hear yourself, to get really focused, and frankly, persistence and diligence toward a goal that can be life changing, family moving, and business changing.
Thank you. Now, when we spoke recently, you said that there have been fierce and fabulous women in your life, starting
Oh
with
yeah.
your mother and maternal grandmother. And I read your post on social media about both women, and I just want to know more. I'd love it if you would share a little bit about them. and how they shaped you.
Well, I've often reflected on the influencers in my life before influencers were popular. And I'm probably not unlike a lot of um, men who look at their mom and look at their grandmother and are always learning from the wisdom. You know, one of the benefits of living is that over time you realize how great your parents were, even if you had conflicts or challenges with them. You look and you say, "Oh my God, they did this. They managed through this. They handled this." So I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, in a big, beautiful house, big 14-room house,
Wow.
and it was a big townhouse. Um, and of course, uh, owning a house like that was different then because it was a different percentage of your income. Nevertheless, it was a huge place, and I did not even know how special it was until I would bring people over and they would look like,
Yeah.
"Oh my God, look at this place." And it was a dream that my mother had. My father died when I was 4. It was a dream my
Mm.
mother and father had. My father died early after we moved there. I think we moved there in 59, 1959. He died at 64.
Mm.
And what I saw happening in the house was leadership. I saw what happens when you've got to make it work. I saw my mother go to work. I saw my mother, she was always working part-time, but really, we have to make some money. And I saw her be very diligent. She took a job at night and began to work at the Port of New York Authority. She was a toll collector there at night.
Mm.
My grandmother went into action, and she was making sure that I was able to get to school and nursery school and all these things. And my brother and sister, who were 8, 9 years older than me, they were kind of disconnected from me because they were on their own track. But I saw them and how they contributed. The key thing I think growing up for me was number one, we had lots of books in the house. So I was always reading. I was always kind of looking for ideas. I didn't even know it, but I was always kind of in search of things. I would take a book. I mean, we literally had a room that was dedicated as a library. It's a narrow room, but it was full of books. And in fact, I discovered Think and Grow Rich in that library. I had been seeing it for a long time, but didn't know what the book was about. But I remember opening it, and when I opened that book, I realized, wow, this is like a lessons on how to make it. Now, subconsciously, I felt the tension of the times because we were in the 60s. So there was war, there was the same thing that's now. There's racial strife, there was uh, business issues. We were not that long from the um, civil rights movement. In fact, I was
Yeah.
still, engaged. And I remember the night that Dr. King was assassinated.
Yeah.
Um,
I do
but
too.
but all of those things, the combination of those things, what I realized is I was in an environment that was almost like a mastermind
Mm.
where where I was learning about success, and not only about success, about aspiration, because my mother was very big into aspiration. She loved a beautiful home. She loved decorating. She loved gardening. She loved cooking. And my grandmother turned me on to New Thought teaching and self
Oh.
help books. And because she was an avid reader. And so I would go through her books and I would learn that I could actually succeed and I could do it. And so I saw just fierce determination,
Mm.
and it reinforced to me that not only could I do it, that that was a model that could work and should be taught. And it's one of the reasons why it's a long answer here, but it's one of the reasons why I'm so concerned about families today, because we are a continuation, really. Even though we enhance and we modify and whatever, we're a continuation of our family, our culture, values and lessons, and we should be building on that as opposed to um, pointing a finger and blaming and all those things,
Mhm.
which I see a lot of today.
You were so fortunate to have grown up in such a progressive household. And your mom and your grandma, man, they were fierce and they made things happen. And
Mm.
I can only imagine how, earth shattering it was. You were only four, you lost your dad, your mom lost her husband, you had two older brothers and sisters that were grieving, and yet your mother persevered and continued to work and do all of the things that she loved doing on top of it and teaching you. Did your mom and grandma get to see your success?
Oh yes, and I think that the other thing about my mother, my grandmother died in 73 or so.
Mm.
My mother, who also has passed, I think it was 2003. Um, what happened is my mother went through a period of what they thought were psychiatric issues, but it turned out to be a thyroid condition.
Oh, yeah.
And so she was behaving strangely and
Yeah.
had some paranoia, and they thought it was psychiatric. And one doctor, the minute he saw her, after years of dealing with this, he said, "I know what this is." And
Mm.
today we know a lot about that. Back then we didn't. But
Right.
the thing that was interesting to me is that my grandmother gave me the tools to support my mother. And because I saw my mother supportive of my grandmother and my grandmother supportive of my mother, I thought that was just the way it was supposed to be.
Mm.
And so, yes, my mother saw me grow. My grandmother did too. My grandmother, even when I was a little kid, I mean, I was excelling in school and doing well. And my grandmother went to Reverend Ike's church up in Washington
Oh, yeah.
Heights. And
Yeah.
she introduced me to him. And of course, he became a great mentor of mine.
Mhm.
And later in life, a friend. And and so,
Mhm.
in so many ways, I felt that this was all kind of destined. Now, when my mother was passing, in the early 2000s, it was interesting because I was going through a transition in my business where we had just come off of 9/11 and the dot-com bust, and the whole speaking business had imploded. There was no conferences and going on. And so I had to shift what I was doing and change. And and yes, she saw the success, but what she didn't know when she was going through what she was going through is the transformation that I was going through. And when you and I met, we met during my Winning Wednesdays events. That's a
Yes.
term that you hear
Yeah.
now people use, but I was using it back in the 2000s. And every night I would give Dr. Tony, I would give, we don't mean to exclude you, Dr. Tony, but
No.
every Wednesday I would teach on a different topic.
Mm.
And that, by the way, Sandra, what you don't know is that was my way of staying engaged with the very formula I just gave you.
Oh, wow.
Clarity, getting the
Mm.
noise out, away, and focus, and staying focused on a big goal. At the time, the big goal was writing a book called You Can Still Win. It
Right.
had not been completed yet, but I much of that book came from those events. And I did about 40 of them in a row. So it was quite an experience. But yes, my mother did see that, and I think going through the experience with my mother, and even during that time, really set me up for doing even greater work as I continue to do.
Andre, I have to go back to what you said about clarity because I think that we need to explore that a little more if you don't mind. You
Hmm.
said you advised our audience to have clarity, especially during these turbulent times. That's a key for success. And just what you've told us, what you've shared about your family and yourself, you all had and have clarity. And I think, in my work as a therapist, I saw a lot of people losing themselves because they didn't have clarity. So, do you have any suggestions for, um, let's see, fostering clarity, getting more clarity in your life?
I think the key really, and I think I'm so grateful that early on I resolved the question of how one succeeds in life and how one achieves clarity. It's actually quite simple. But I think that today the world is so sophisticated. There are so many competing ideas and philosophies and all these things that it's very easy to be confused. When I was a kid, I was confused by what I was seeing and I didn't even realize it. Looking at the Vietnam War, looking at racial tension and all of that. But out of all of that became these phrases and these belief systems that I could make it. The book, Napoleon Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich, it's an affirmative statement. Think and grow rich. Now you hear that title and you wonder, well, how? And you begin to get into it and you realize that there's a methodology to it. My book, You Can Still Win, one of my books, I realized that that was a phrase that I always used. And when I think back on my life, that was the message that I felt very early on. So, whenever I'm in a position where there's confusion, where there's setback, where things don't go my way, I remind myself that I can still win.
Mhm.
And I begin to expect to win, to begin to feel like I'm going to win. And when I start to hear details about why I might not be winning, whether it's statistics, whether it's war, whether it's the president, the mayor, the person at the restaurant, wherever it is, I I get rid of all of that.
Mm.
And I begin to focus solely on my objective. Now, I emphasize this because I think in my life I've had so many tests. And when I say that my mother was going through psychiatric issues, she was or what seemed like psychiatric, she would walk up and down that 14-room house that's third, three, 4 stories all night, back and forth because she couldn't sleep, talking to
Mm.
herself. And we couldn't figure out what is this? What's going on? And but I kept reminding myself that we can this is something we can win. This is something we can figure out. I didn't know all the tools. Today it is more important than ever because a lot of the recommendations that I see are divisive. They're competitive. They're this person is doing something to you. Walk away from this person. Don't take this. This person is jealous. This person's a narcissist. This person, it's a lot of divisiveness. And back in the past, our music was even clarity. It was about love and it was uh about moving forward and success and all of these things. So I think the number one thing is, what do you believe? What do you believe? What is your belief about the world? As Tony Robbins says, what meaning do you attach to moments? Um, as the great wisdom says, as a man thinks, it's as a mind thinks, so is he. If you really understand that and believe that, you've got your clarity. Now you have to set about embodying that, living that, looking for that. And as the great philosopher used to say, Neville, live in the end, act as if. And or as Wayne Dyer said, change the way you think, the things you look at will change. So there's no secret anymore. There was a film, The Secret.
Yeah.
There's no secret anymore what we need to do. Sometimes we've gotten so sophisticated that we delve into problems so deeply, and our neuroses, no disrespect to you, doctor, but I really believe that if we get back to the ancient wisdom, we have our answers.
Hmm. I love that. Thank you. And you provided such clarity and how to find your own clarity in life. I love it. Thank you. And you did mention a book, but I understand you have another book coming out this fall called The Premier You. So tell us a little bit about that, please.
Yes, yes. I've always loved the word premier. You know, premier, when it ends with an E, it means the beginning, the first show, the showcase, like a movie or film. But when it ends with an R, it means the best. And you'll see a lot of organizations will say, we are the premier this, we are the premier that. And I used to wonder, what do they mean by that? What is the criteria for that? What is their formula? And so I began to think about what that meant. And I began to lecture about it and talk about it. And I decided I was going to write a book about becoming premier as an individual. As you mentioned in the intro, I do a lot of coaching and consulting and work in the premium and luxury markets. And you have individuals who are selling the finest products in the world, presenting themselves with the greatest brands in the world. And often the challenge for them is how they feel about themselves, who they are. They're dealing with very intimidating environments and intimidating people. And so when I would coach individuals in that sector, I would remind them that there was luxury inside of them. So the Premier You is is um, my book for everyone to embody that mindset. It includes your seven zones of purpose and excellence and prosperity, and I take the reader through many of the steps that I've gone through in becoming better at what I do, becoming stronger at what I do, and being able to maintain clarity during difficult times. I think it's the right message for right now, coming back to yourself and finding that best in you and really understanding how to do that.
Wonderful. And so can you share with us when we can expect to see this book published and how we can purchase it?
Absolutely. The book will be available in November, and I invite your viewers and listeners to write me at info@andretaylor.com, info@andretaylor.com. Let me know that you saw this on this podcast, and we'll put you on the VIP list so that you know exactly when the book is released. We're going to be having some events around that. I'm going to be doing some live online events. I'm going to be doing some speaking, and we're figuring that all out right now. And I want your audience to absolutely be in on that right away.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Well, you've shared so much wisdom with us. We so appreciate that. Are there any last words, any last thoughts you'd like to share with our audience today?
I think that two things. One is, uh, you know, if you're under 40, you look at life and you see, what was that? I heard a little grumble there.
I haven't been under for
Well,
28 years.
well, I've got something for you too. I was going to say that often I will ask when I'm speaking, how many of you are under 40? And people will raise their hand. And then I'll ask how many of you are over 40, and they'll raise their hand. And the good news is that this message is for both of you, whether you're under 40 or over 40. It's important to understand the stages of life and that in life, we have things that we learn and are supposed to learn at different times in our life. Interestingly, to me, they are emphasis of the same thing. Um, there are times that they become very intense when you're starting. Let's go for it. You can do it. You can so forth. And then a little later, it becomes, let's refine this. Let's get rid of those things that are unnecessary. Let's drill down in these areas that really make the most sense. So, my message is really think about the stage of life that you're at. No matter where you are on a track for enormous success. And I think that even when you're young and you think, oh my God, how am I going to be able to afford a house in this market? How am I going to be able to do this and that? I felt the same way when I was in my 20s. I
Mm.
felt the same way. And if you're in your 50s, 60s, 70s, and you're thinking, oh my God, what am I going to do? Whatever, I want to remind you that, Colonel Saunders was 65 and sleeping in his car
Yes.
and he had a
Right.
multi-million-dollar recipe. And he knew it. The premier person inside of him knew that that lifetime of work and challenges and struggle and twists and turns was going to pay off if he devoted himself with clarity and focus to what he had, which was knowledge of how to create a great Sunday dinner and give it to someone every day. And at
Mm.
the age of 70 plus, he sold his company for the equivalent of, it was 2 million or so then. I think it was equivalent like 20 million today. So I'm
Mm.
emphasizing this to say wherever you are, this is the right time. If you can be clear, if you can be diligent, if you can be focused, if you can believe in yourself, you can still win. And I want you to rise to the premier you.
Thank you, Andre, for being with us today. For our audience, check out Andre's website, www.andretaylor.com, and contact him at info@andretaylor.com. Andre, as always, it was a pleasure having you as our guest today. Thank you for being on our podcast.
Wonderful to be here. Dr. Tony, Sandra, thank you so much. And all the best to you in making this the best podcast in the world.
Oh, thank
Thank you
you.
so much.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye bye.
Bye, Andre.